Good morning, everybody. My name is Ciaran Fallon. I'm the Director of Coillte Nature, which is a new division of Coillte, the state forestry company. Coillte was formed in 1989 and Coillte Nature was formed 2 years ago in the summer of June 2020. I have 5 ideas I'd like to share with you today. They are planning forests for the future, creating a network of new local woodlands, creating a new National Forest Trust for Ireland, paying for ecosystem services, and locking in carbon in the long term. But before I do that, I'd like to take 1 minute just to give a little bit of context about forestry in Ireland, which might explain where we are today and where we can go. Ireland has exceptional conditions for growing trees. Our mild, wet climate, our soils, and our abundance of fresh water means trees grow here very, very well. Our growth rates in Ireland are 3 to 4 times faster than those in Sweden, a country that for many people is synonymous with forestry. Yet we have one of the lowest levels of forest cover in Europe at 12%. The European average is close to 40%. So why is that so? Well, we don't have the time to get into all the detail today, but suffice to say it's the result of successive waves of deforestation for the creation of agricultural land and the use of wood as a fuel and also a source of timber. So it's a story of clearance and over-exploitation. But I suppose the takeaway point is we have excellent conditions for growing trees, and we have a lot of headroom, a lot of room to grow our forests, and that would help us with many things, including the biodiversity crisis and the climate change crisis. So my first idea today is creating a future plan for our Irish forests. I mean a vision, a long-term vision of where we want to go. Because it might surprise you, but while there are shelves in libraries bending under the weight of reports, technical reports and guidance around forestry, we don't really have an agreed vision as to where we want to go with this. And I think this is really necessary, and it's missing because forests are a really long-term undertaking. The decisions you take today endure well into the second half of the century and into the century that follows. So you need to have that long-term horizon when you're thinking about forestry. And also forestry today is very much caught up in immediate term thinking about land use. And I think we need to step a little bit further back from that and say, where do we want to take this? Where do we want it to go in the future? So it might surprise you today we're speaking about immediate things we can do to research, and a plan mightn't seem immediate, but I think the actual process of creating that plan, the dialogue, the conversation necessary to do that could be potentially transformative, because it makes us think about what do we want to do more of and what do we need to do less of to achieve that. The plan shouldn't be done alone in a room by experts. I think it's going to affect our whole landscape, so it's something that everybody should be involved in. And it shouldn't be an isolated plan. It should speak to other layers of planning. We're doing a lot of work around regional planning, where we're going to build our built environment, planning for water resources and flood risk management, looking at the carbon emissions associated with agriculture and peatlands. So it should be a layer within that and integrated within that. So that's my first one, a new forest vision, a new plan, a new long-term horizon of where we're going. And I think there's actually potentially the opportunity to create great consensus around that, because I think in the long term, most people will agree, and what causes conflict is the very short and immediate term, which is not immediately important for forestry. You have to think further into the future. My second idea is creating a network of local woodlands. Now, in Coillte, in some of our more popular forests, we have counters which tell us how many people have entered the forest. And during COVID, those numbers skyrocketed. People were using our forests as a place to recreate and rejuvenate, both physically and spiritually. Get out there, spend some time in nature. And forests are wonderful for that, because they can actually absorb relatively large numbers of people without feeling oppressive or crowded. In the Dublin Mountains, near to where I live, we are converting at the moment 900 hectares of land from commercial production forests into nature and recreation forests in what we call the Dublin Mountains Makeover. And I'd like to see that writ large across the country. I think we could do that near to a lot of our local towns and villages, and create local forests where people can actually get out and experience nature and enjoy woodlands. Because I think very much in Ireland and probably in Britain too, we have become slightly phobic, distanced from nature. We seem to think it's something that you need a PhD really to engage with. And of course, that's not true. Anybody who's in forests and opening themselves to the experience can really generate an appreciation of nature. And I think that's something that's done very well in other European countries, but maybe we haven't been so good at doing that. So I think there's a great opportunity to create new local woodlands, new community woodlands, where we can have forest schools, walks, foraging for mushrooms, etc., and get people out into forests and really get that feeling for forests inside and grow that forest culture, which is actually missing in Ireland because of our experience and because of our low forest cover. My third idea is creating a new National Forest Trust. In the 2 years since Coillte Nature has been set up, I've been approached many times by individuals and organizations who are interested in being associated with the creation of new forests, in funding the creation of new forests, but not necessarily in owning them. So I think there is an opportunity for a credible, independent organization that can hold forest assets in trust in perpetuity. And this would probably be a company limited by guarantee with charitable status that would have a strong board and a good scientific committee to advise that board. And it would create these forests from private fund sources and give the funders confidence that these forests are being well managed into the future, that there is public access and they will be maintained in the long term, and there is a good, robust registry. It wouldn't need to be a very big organization. It could be quite lean and use outside companies, private forestry companies, Coillte perhaps, to actually provide the forest services. But it's a separate holding unit that people can invest in confidence and know they're creating something for the future. With COVID, our public finances are very stretched. I think it's unrealistic to think that we can grow new native woodlands purely from public finances. But it does seem to me there are a lot of organizations in the world that are looking in their transition to net zero to green investments. And where better to do that than in Ireland with our low level of forest cover. My fourth idea is payments for ecosystem services. And this is looking at the idea of the external things that forests create that are really important to the general public. So forests sequester and store carbon. They can clean water. They can help with flood risk. They can be a habitat for wildlife. But the only thing that we really value at the moment is the timber that they create. And that leads forest owners to maximize the timber value and optimize that. And in the process of that, they can be sub-optimizing these other ecosystem services. So what we need to do, I think, is let's be fair to forest owners. And if these things are important to society, we should pay for these other ecosystem services and create an opportunity for forest owners actually to create benefits for the public, to make it economically rational for them to do that. The principle of aligning flows of finance with environmental outcomes is enshrined in the Paris Climate Agreement. And we're already beginning to see in the last year or so, particularly, these ideas coming out where finance is actually looking for opportunities to invest in green infrastructure. And I see, more recently, the EU Green Taxonomy, which has recently been finished, it includes opportunities for investment in forest. And I think we just got to, if we want those outcomes, we have to find a way of transferring that to farmers and forest owners and encouraging them to create those beneficial public outcomes. My final idea is about locking in carbon in the long term. Now, as we all know, trees grow by taking carbon from the atmosphere, photosynthesizing it, and storing that carbon in long molecules within the biomass of trees, both above and below ground. And the rate at which that occurs, it depends upon the species of the tree, it depends on your soil type, your drainage, and so on. But the pattern that it follows is that it starts off quite slow, then it gradually increases, and as trees mature, it plateaus and stabilizes. And then trees, like all living things, die. And the biomass in the decomposing tree releases that carbon back into the atmosphere again. So we need to find great ways of storing that carbon. Now, in the house I'm living in now, the roof truss was built in 1880. So the wood in that roof is storing carbon from the atmosphere from the 19th century. So we need to find ways of using wood we take from our forests, and holding it in the long term. Now, because of the great conditions we have for growing trees, they grow quickly here, but they tend to grow timber, which is of low density and can be very useful for certain applications like roof trusses, but has limited structural application. However, in the last 10 years, there's been a revolution in engineered timber wood, which basically uses softer woods to configure them in a way that allows them to be low bearing and to be part of the structure of a building and lock in that carbon within buildings, and also displace higher carbon products like steel and concrete. So we need to look at that in Ireland. I think we have a real opportunity to do that here. In Norway, the largest timber building in the world is an 18-story building which combines a hotel, restaurant, offices and apartments, is built entirely of locally harvested pine timber. It's all harvested within 50 kilometers of the building. And that's a carbon negative building. Architects call them ply scrapers. So there's a real opportunity to do that. I don't think we have to build to those extremes in Ireland, but certainly the 3, 4, 5, 6-story buildings we're going to have to create in the years ahead could be built with Irish material. And the two things we need to do there is obviously, one, the hardware, a plan to build this. But secondly, I think the culture, the changing building culture, so we engage with our young architects and engineers and get them used and accustomed to building with timber and seeing the benefits of building with timber. So there are my 5 ideas. I'd like to thank Fergal for the opportunity for sharing those today. I really look forward to hearing other people's ideas and really look forward to the morning ahead. Thank you.